I brought up April Fools, guys, and obviously Georgia doesn't play football during April Fools, but I wanted y'all to kind of look back here and think about some of the biggest moments where Georgia fooled you. And maybe it was for a good reason. Maybe it was like that LSU game in 2000, was it 2003 or 2004 when LSU was the defending national champs and the Dawgs just blew the doors off Nick Saban between the hedges. I don't think anyone expected that to happen. Maybe it was David Green's legendary play action fake, or Aaron Murray. He pulled it off too against Ole Miss, and David Green did it against Vandy. What are some moments that stand out to y'all on this theme of April Fools where Georgia really just pulled a bait and switch on you? Mine will always be the David Green play action fake. And I was there for that game, and I was there for the Aaron Murray against Ole Miss.
Marlon Brown, I think it was, that caught that pass.
But the one against Vandy when David Green did it, he fooled everybody. He fooled the Jefferson Pilot, Cameron Well. He might have fooled Mark Richt.
Oh, man. I'm trying to think. I tell you, this is going to sound weird. Talk about a bait and switch. 2016, Kirby Smart's first year at Georgia. They go to Ole Miss, and they get absolutely gutted. I'm talking about just stem to stern, just ripped wide open, guts out everywhere on the field. You're thinking, oh, my God. And maybe you should have saw it coming. They had already struggled with Nichols earlier that year. Kirby was obviously struggling a little bit himself, but also struggling to kind of get that culture implemented. The team was more talented than it was playing, but it wasn't super, super ready to compete the big time either. And then, man, Tennessee, which, was a much better team, and Georgia ended up losing the game. Tennessee rolls into town, and Georgia just starts punching them in the mouth repeatedly, over and over and over again.
Tennessee ranked number 11.
Georgia found a way to lose that ball game. I mean,
did Georgia lose 3 games in a row that year? Because I know they lost Vanderbilt right after.
No, they lost 4 of 5 in that stretch. They lost Ole Miss, Tennessee. Then they beat South Carolina in that Sunday game. Mm-hmm. And then they lost to Vandy and then Florida.
Yeah. And then kind of got it back on the right track with a ranked win over Auburn in a low-scoring game, and then found a way to lose to Tech, there late in the season. Just a real weird team. And then another bait and switch on the other side of that is 2014, Mike Bobo's last year at Georgia. I mean, they lose to South Carolina. They lose Todd Gurley. Then they, look awesome. They lose to Florida out of nowhere, bait and switch. They get it back on track.
Is that the one where they gave up like 500 rushing yards?
Yeah, 400 and something, yeah. They just kept running the same play over and over and over again. And then they get it back on track, beat the fool out of Auburn. Again, a ranked Auburn team at home, just tear them out of the frame. And then they lose to Tech. So Mark Richt's teams are pretty good at the bait and switch. They could get up and play some big games. They could lose ones they weren't supposed to lose. As much as there were more times, good times than bad, there were some head scratchers.
When you lose to Tech, man, it doesn't matter how good the season is. It's such a cliche, but it just puts the worst taste in your mouth. Matthew C. says that the Tech loss in 2016 was the worst of them all. We were talking about this on the board the other day, though. In an ironic twist of fate, it really could have been one of the best things to happen for Georgia because Nick Chubb and Sony Michel decided to come back. I know Nick Chubb said specifically he came back because of that loss. I don't know how much of a factor it was for Sony and Lorenzo and Davin Bellamy. But what if Georgia wins that game and Nick Chubb says, all right, I'm ready to go to the league? You never know what happens.
Yeah, no doubt. That game absolutely played a part because they all announced that they were coming back like 3 weeks later, 2-3 weeks later. I mean, it was before the Liberty Bowl. We all knew that they were, coming back. So that definitely played a role. And probably, you look back and talk about what ifs and blessings in disguise and his ways are higher than our ways. That's one of them right there.
The 2008 season was a bait and switch. Uncle Glenn says the whole year was a bait and switch.
I feel so bad for that team that year though, because it was, I don't know, man. The team wasn't particularly deep. It wasn't as deep as it needed to be to win win a championship and be elite. But I don't know that Georgia could have been deep enough to withstand what it withstood that year. I mean, Trenton Sturdivant, ACL, injury after injury after injury. I mean, that team just was snake bit to the nth degree. They lost so many good players before the season even started. So many key players, and that's always a tough pill to swallow.
Even if they were healthy, I don't know that they were going to have what it took to beat that Florida team. Specifically after we find out how pissed off Urban Meyer was about Richt kind of running it up or running in the end zone and kind of punking them out in 2007. Yeah, I don't know that anyone knew what they were walking into in Jacksonville that year.
I'd like to have seen it because, Florida did beat up on Georgia pretty good. Georgia was still in that game, second, third quarter, I believe, had a chance to kind of get back in it and had some mistakes. But, yeah, that team was kind of starting to come apart at the seams. And I think you had once you had a couple losses, once you had, I think, the Alabama, embarrassment at the blackout and all that stuff, I think what you really ran into there was, I think, Noshawn and Stafford, and whether they would admit it or not or whatever, I think that they kind of got a foot out the door once the
I think Noshawn's admitted it. I think he's it wasn't really a secret. I mean, they enjoyed their time in Athens, and once that season was not a championship season, I think everyone knew how that one was headed.
And listen, that's one of the reasons why when I defend the Bobo hire, or I'm going to defend any hire Kirby makes at this point, unless he decides to bring James Coley back as offensive coordinator, or Kevin Ramsey back as defensive coordinator, because listen, man, what Georgia's got going on right now, the expectations, the way it's kind of feeding off of itself like year after year, it's going to elevate a lot of good coaches. I mean, you had Todd Monken, and who did a fantastic job at Georgia as a play caller. Fantastic. I don't want to take anything away from him. You heard great things about the way he game planned and about the way he taught. You had Todd Monken there, who took Brock Vandegrift over Caleb Williams. Then they went and tried to get Caleb Williams out of the portal. And then tried to run off Stetson Bennett. And they couldn't lose. They couldn't figure out a way to mess it up. And I'm not trying to say Todd Monken, but I mean, they made a couple of mistakes like people do, and they still couldn't figure out a way to mess it up.
Yeah.
Because the culture was there. The connection was there. And, I think if I were to look back years down the line and to write let's say Georgia three-peats and somebody says, hey, you go write a book, that's the first thing I'm going to is the connection and the culture, because I think that is even more important than the talent and the depth, because, they're first rounders and stuff like that, but there's not a first rounder at wideout. There's not a generationally talented freak show quarterback. It's a really well-balanced, good, deep roster with incredible culture.
Just Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of switcheroos and Todd Monken, how about Lamar Jackson?
Oh, boy.
I mean, he thought that was we knew it was tenuous, but how about Monken showing up now and just kind of wondering, like, all right, what am I going to do here?